Alright, welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be demoing some paperweights, which as you know are technically your midterm piece. So there's a lot of good skills in this piece, everything from frick gathering, second gathers, blocking, slumping, all that fun stuff. So let's just go ahead and get started. For this demo, I'm going to be showing a paperweight with a mangle interior, so go reference the Color Techniques video that has also been posted to this playlist for other ways that you can make paperweights or other patterns you can put on the inside. However, for a mangle, I personally like them with two different colors, so I'm just simply applying my frit, making sure I get a cohesive covering. I give it a tap-tap to make sure I don't have any loose frit before I go heat it into the glory, and then I start my bench work. For a mangled paperweight, what you do is you're just going to take those tweezers and you are going to pull all of that glass around, you're going to twist it, you're pretty much just going to mangle those colors together until you have a cool, unique striations in there or anything like that. Your tweezers will start to stick to the glass every now and then. You'll see me dip those into water every now and then as well to make sure that I keep those cool. If they start sticking, don't worry about it, just wiggle and wiggle and wiggle until the glass cools off and is brittle enough to let go of those tweezers. I'm touching it up now just a little bit to get it back on center, and then I'm also putting the side of the jacks to it as well to start cooling it down. Right before your second gather, you're going to want to be as cool as possible so you keep your interior shape, especially for paperweights. So you can cool this with the back of the jacks like I'm doing here, or if you want just an even faster or more significant heat suck, you can also roll it around on the marver as well. So now that I'm pretty stiff, I'm going to go to the marver to get some more heat, or to suck out some more heat, and then I went in for my second gather. You'll see that I tried my best to cover the bottom of my moil to make sure that that was crisp and clean. I have a little bit of a deficit on the bottom, but it's okay, I can make it work. It's not as critical for pieces like paperweights, but it will be more critical in later on pieces. This next step that I'm doing is called blocking, which is using a wooden block to give it this kind of orb shape. These blocks are made out of wood, so you want to make sure that you keep dipping it in water as you're going through, and then as well, you're making sure that you're letting the glass fall into the block rather than pushing upwards too much. You never want to block when you're off center, it'll just make your piece go haywire, and if you see any nubbins on the top, or if your piece is too far on the moil, you can always tilt that block, like you saw me doing earlier, to get it a little bit corrected. Once you're happy with your shape, you can start putting in that jack line. You want to make sure that you are going straight on with those jacks. You want to make sure the blades are completely parallel to each other and that you aren't crooked. You can be a little bit crooked at first if you're on the punty and need to pull off, but you need to get back to vertical as soon as possible so you can have that crisp and clean jack line. Throughout this whole process, you can go back to the glory hole as much as you need to get more heat. I'm just going rather quickly in this because I know how to manage my heat and I've been doing this for a little bit. So with that, make sure to get heat as soon as you feel your piece stopping to move. But once you have that jack line in, once you're fully blocked, not in that order obviously, you're going to switch your grip on those jacks and then you're going to stand up. Now you'll notice I'm now out of frame, so I actually had to go back in the shop and do a second video, which we're speeding through the first part now to get to the slumping part so you can actually see what's going to happen. So I did a really fast blocking, and then I'm finishing up my jack line. Don't worry, that initial part was sped up for your own viewing safety. But you'll see I go and grab with that grip flip, and then I stand up completely. I'm still turning that punty, and I'm not constricting the jack line at any point anymore. I'm letting the base of the paperweight fall onto the blades. No actual pressure is being applied horizontally. It's all just me providing a base for that paperweight to sit on as the glass falls down. You want to make sure you have a pretty good heat for this, otherwise your paperweight won't slump. You'll see from the beginning to the end of this portion, the top of that paperweight really sank down and it's flattened out. This is what's going to allow your paperweight to sit flat on a surface, and then also won't really look like an egg, which if you like that look, go for it. However, a good paperweight really does have a good slump in general. I'm once again still just letting that paperweight rest. I still had a fair amount of heat in this particular one, so you can see I come off just a little bit to check it. You'll see it tilting a little bit, so I tilt my punty in response so I can get it back on center. Another thing that you can do with your jacks is tilting your punty or tilting the jacks to make sure that you keep it straight up and down and you don't slide your jack line around too much, which if you get too hot is something that can happen and get your piece off center. As I'm waiting for it to cool, once again, no pressure, just letting that heat suck out. I'm checking it every now and then, and what I'm going to start doing is now that the outside of the piece has cooled down, but the interior still has heat, I'm switching how I'm holding my jacks. Instead, I'm putting the very tips of the jacks along that interior jack line to push the jack line up into my paperweight. This kind of gives it a little bit of a concavity to it so that only the outer rim of the paperweight will be what actually is the lowest part, whereas the jack line is shoved up on the inside of the paperweight so that what happens is that it'll sit a little bit flatter. I'm also bobbing the punty up and down. You don't want to do this when you're too cold, otherwise that percussion could really make your piece just drop off, or if your jack line's too small, it could also cause that. So you never want to have that punty placed on the ground. I currently have it balanced on my foot to soften the blow of that, and then once again, you don't want to do it if your piece is too cold. So I'm happy with where that's at. I'm just going to let it air cool for a little bit now since it's not moving. If you come off too soon and it is still moving, you have the chance of having your piece remelt in with the moil, which is never fun. That can be sheared apart, or you can just let it break off since it will be a pretty thin section of glass anyway that happens. It will hinder your rotation though. So once again, I was letting air cool it down, putting the jacks back on just because metal does suck out heat a little bit faster. I had a ton of heat still left in this piece, so that's why it's taking a fair amount of time. But you'll have to use your own guidance. If you do have a really large paperweight, you may need to flash it a couple times, which I would reference a bird video for that. When you go to break off for a paperweight, it's very similar to a caterpillar, where you run that butter knife along your jackline of your piece, and then you're just letting it cool down even more, providing more thermal stress to that particular point. Once you've made at least 2 full rotations, you're going to want to put slight pressure on your piece, give it a tap with the back end of the butter knife, and there you have it. It breaks off. What you can do is you can either stamp the bottom or you can flatten it with the knife. I'm preferential to the stamp just because why not have an extra pretty design? But what you will do and what you will want to do in general is make sure you flame polish at the bare minimum. That pretty much melts in those fracture points that you have at your jack line. So if you have any glass that's jutting upwards, that could cause it to hurt someone since it is technically a broken piece of glass that's slightly less sharp. Or if you just want to make sure that it sits flat, if you pulled out your jack line a little bit too much or didn't get enough of a slump, you torch it in with just your standard blowtorch, and then you're going to take a stamp, and once you've gotten it glowing hot, you're going to get ready to come on. Press down as hard as you can and as straight down as you can. You can see there's a little bit of a jut up on that one, so it's not going to sit super flat. But once you're done with that, once you've pressed down, then you are good to go to get it put in the annealer. I kind of struggled turning it around a bit for you so you could see it, but that is the steps for a paperweight. There's obviously some variations that you can do with the interior color, or if something goes wrong, talk to your TAs about it, but in the long run, happy glass blowing.